JoAnn, if you want to get going, let's do it.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are feeding off this energy that Kapri and Holiday are putting out right now. We've been on already for a little bit with each other, just kind of messing around. So I'm so excited for you guys to get to hear them talk today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is JoAnn Street, and I'm a portfolio ambassador for the Wild Turkey Distilling Co. And I'm based here in Louisville, Kentucky, so not too far from the distillery. I'm really excited to be a part of another Portland Cocktail Week training session. It's Friday. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. With me today, we have Kapri Robinson of DC and the president of Chocolate City's Best. Although we might be talking about carbonation and whiskey today, don't let her fool you because she does have an insane love of picking between rum and gin. Along with Kapri, we have Michael Holiday, or just Holiday, of DC as well, and the platform curator for Chocolate City's Best. That is not his only job, though. He has recently become a homeschool teacher to his 2 children, so definitely sending you all the patience in the world for that during this time. I can't even imagine the patience you must have, but today we're going to talk about Keepin' It Bubbly, probably one of everyone's favorite refresher in a cocktail, carbonation. But today they will be using Wild Turkey 101, which is kind of the epitome of who we are as a brand. It's going to be a 6 to 8-year-old bourbon at 101 proof. The product is going to bring out a lot of spice and vanilla to it. And what I really love about Wild Turkey 101 is that you can still taste it in a cocktail, whether it be a carbonated cocktail or whatever it may be that you're drinking it with. It always stands out. You can always tell that bourbon is still alive in that cocktail. So that is one of my favorite things that I love about it as well. Both of these guys right here in front of us are very passionate about technique. They believe that with continuous education, it can only help you create the best of the best cocktails. So with the help of these beautiful people after today, they hope they are able to strengthen your knowledge of carbonation with a few simple tricks. I'm going to hand it over to them to take it away with all things science, cocktails, and carbonation with our class, Keepin' It Bubbly.
All right. Thank you so much. That was such a lovely intro. I am so excited to be here. We're excited to be here. This is definitely one of our largest classes that we've ever done. So, I mean, let's get to it. Let's get nerdy. But like she said, I am Kapri Robinson. I am the president and engagement ambassador of Chocolate City's Best.
And I'm Michael Holiday. I'm the platform curator at Chocolate City's Best. And again, we appreciate this opportunity. At Chocolate City's Best, we like to highlight people of color, and we want to focus on equity through education and just being present, right? So we thank you for this opportunity to educate and to represent people of color. Representation is very, very important. So today we're going to go over, with our class, we're going to go over a couple of topics.
Let's get Leo to go ahead and thank you so
Leo,
much. Put those
slides up.
Yes.
All right.
So this is Keeping It Bubbly with Chocolate City's Best.
All right, so an overview, we all love effervescence. We love great bubbly cocktails. So we're gonna go over ways that you can keep that going at your bar program or at your home. Leo, next slide. So we're gonna talk about the history of carbonation, carbonation chemistry, Henry's law, and how that comes from carbonation, the temperature effect that applies to carbonation, volumes of CO2, and ways to carbonate. Next slide. All right, so so the first person to, I guess, discover how to independently create carbonation was Joseph Priestley. Joseph Priestley did it by accident. What he did, he took one vessel and another vessel, and over a beer vat while it was fermenting, CO2 was being released into the environment. He just poured water from one vessel to another vessel to another vessel to increase the carbonation inside of that liquid. And then he ended up with bubbly water, right? Or carbonated water, or as he liked to put it, like a man of that time, right? Impregnating water with fixed air. And that was published in 1772. Next slide. And then in 1770, we had a Swedish chemist by the name of Turbon. He invented the first apparatus to create carbonated water. And he first tested findings on himself, which was bold, very bold, right?
Could have died.
Yeah, definitely could have died. But he used carbonic acid and other elements used from the earth to replicate what would happen naturally. Next slide.
All right. So in 1798, we find that the soda water term is first coined. But you don't see soda water or anything of imitation of mineral waters coming to the United States until the 1810, when it was actually patented in the United States through Simmons, and Rundle of Charleston. But it doesn't even get popular in the United States until 1832, where you see John Matthews inventing an apparatus, which is also something that he did, kind of modeling what we saw from Thorburn earlier in 1770. His apparatus kind of models that, so that we are now mass producing soda water for people to have. Next slide, I kind of want to show something here. So this is a pretty cool thing that John Matthews put together. So on your hours, the same time, sorry, I'm thinking Vimeo. On your left, you see here is actually their portable apparatus for soda water, which I think is really cool to see. So these are apparatuses that would roam through the streets, really. So down at the bottom right corner of that picture, you can see like two barrels or two like tanks. That's where they kept the CO2. And then up top, above that is where you'll see a water tank almost. And all of that is connected to pour out the front of it. If on that top picture there, you'll see the spouts. And then on the bottom left picture, you see the spouts facing you. But it's kind of funny to look at this because you're like, wow, this was portable back in the 1800s, right? Like, like literally pushing your whole weight, like portable soda. I think that's so funny. And then the next picture here that you see is, is a little bit of ad of the John Matthews Apparatus Co. And he was bringing these soda water apparatuses to people to do soda fountains. And what he would do is hook up the CO2 tanks below. You couldn't see anything that was going on. And I guess for some reason, this was a new invention for a lot of people. And all you saw up top, of course, was the draft system coming through. But look how fancy that is. Like I thought that our Coca-Cola system right now that we have at the movie theaters, like pressing button, was like really fancy, but this is pretty like, they did a lot of detail there. But yeah, so we wanted to just show the history of like where it started in England and how it traveled all the way to the US. But let's go into a little bit of the chemistry that we have going on. So carbonation chemistry. The carbonation is the process of carbon dioxide dissolving in a liquid, either artificially by adding carbon dioxide to your liquid, or it's going to be naturally like fermentation, or also if you like natural springs have a little bit of carbonic acid that also come up into it too. So carbon dioxide can be added to a liquid under pressure. You want a lot of pressure, and it allows that fizz that you feel on your mouth. Carbon dioxide is weakly soluble in water, and therefore when it is into water, when you release that pressure, it starts to separate itself from the water. But when you have the carbon dioxide and it attaching to the H2O, you have a carbonic acid, which, you know, you separate it, it's carbon dioxide and water. That's why you hear the fizz, the bubbling, when you open a bottle, or if you're letting that pressure out, that's what you get that sound from. So we're gonna go a little bit into Henry's law here and why this is important. So Henry's law states that the solubility of a gas is directly proportional to partial pressure of that same gas. So Henry's law has an equation, and it's S equals Kp, where S is your solubility, K is a Henry's constant. So Henry has a constant or variable per gas. So it's not just carbon dioxide, but there's different gases that he has a constant for. And then P is your partial pressure. Partial pressure is a pressure that would be exerted by one of the gases in a mixture if occupied the same volume on its own. So we're gonna see something soon where it kind of shows this going on. And then solubility means the ability to be dissolved, especially in water, right? So one thing that we're trying to find when you're doing carbonated cocktails is that you're trying to get the most solubility in your mixture so that when you're putting in that CO2, you can get as much CO2 gas within that drink itself. So one thing that Henry's Law talks about is that it pretty much shows that the more pressure, the higher the pressure, the more CO2 or gas that's going to enter that solution itself. Yes, and I'm keeping up with myself. I'm just like talking. Here it does say that air is the enemy of good carbonation. That is true. So say I have an ISI or something like that. You want to make sure that you're filling most of that headspace with the gas and trying to get most of that oxygen and different things and other gases that are just naturally there out. Because the more gas that you have, the CO2 that you have, the more that is seeping into and becoming into your solution at the bottom. If we can go to the picture. So here's a picture here. And it says pressure and solubility. This is Henry's Law. So you have your equation there at the top. So each of these is the same amount of liquid here. So we're starting just with just one, let's say we're doing 1 pump of CO2, and you can see just a little bit of that CO2 was into the water. You want to do another pump of CO2. The more CO2 that was in that airspace, that partial pressure there is now leaking into your liquid down at the bottom. And then you want to pressure it again, and now you have more CO2 in that airspace, right? So you have more gas that's also seeping back into your liquid down at the bottom, making it a solution. And another way to do this is also by force. So say you had a tank like this, so instead of adding more gas, you're lessening the volume in your space, right? So you have something that could be literally just pressing down on that gas and kind of forcing it to incorporate with that liquid below. But yes, that's that. Next slide.
Great. Before we hop into temperature, I know we were rambling through history and a little bit of science. Are there any questions? JoAnn, how are you feeling?
I'm doing well. I'm very intrigued. I feel like this is kind of taking me back to like science class right now, you know? Like you learn all of that growing up and in school, and then it's like really cool to kind of like actually see how we use it every day, you know?
For sure, for sure. I mean, it's really not fun until you can find great ways to apply it, and what better ways than cocktails, right?
Exactly.
Any questions out there that we can answer?
I'm not seeing any right now, but I will let you guys know as they come. Or if I have any, I will interrupt you. Don't worry.
For sure, for sure. Well, let's get back to it. Temperature. All right, so we talked about how air is an enemy of carbonation. Temperature is also an enemy of carbonation.
Or heat, at least.
Yeah, well, heat, right? Well, the lack of
Hey,
heat.
Holiday, can you back up a little bit so we can see your face?
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
So the amount of CO2 that's dissolved in a liquid is increased as when the environment's colder. So when you're carbonating a beverage or anything, you want to make sure you can isolate the liquid before you carbonate it and get it to as closest to freezing as you can without it freezing, of course. So then also pouring a carbonated beverage into a cold container, cold glass, is also very important, because as soon as the temperature increase on that beverage, the carbonation, well, the saturated carbon dioxide that's in the liquid is going to try to break free. So the higher the temperature, the more excited the molecules are going to become, and they're going to try to break free into the atmosphere. Hence, if you take a warm soda and you open it, it's going to fizz up. But if it's colder, you'll get a light fizz, but you get more carbonation within that liquid. Next slide. We have a video that's going to exemplify that. So you just press play there for us, Leo, so that they can have.
I'm just gonna load it right now.
All right.
Yay, video time.
All right, while it's loading, grab popcorn or your wild turkey, take a sip, get ready, or you can watch this silent dance party Video will be coming up shortly.
But what this video is pretty much going to show is that you're going to see how in different temperatures the CO2 is trying to release itself. I
think it's happening.
Hi everybody. In this demonstration we're going to be looking at factors that can change the solubility of a gas in a liquid. The gas that we're using is carbon dioxide, the liquid is water, so we're using a bottle of seltzer water, which is bottled at very high pressure, pushing carbon dioxide molecules into solution in the water. So what we're going to be using are 3 different bottles of seltzer water. I've got one that's been sitting out at room temperature, another one which is in a warm water bath, so we're heating that seltzer water up. And then finally, the third one here has been sitting in a large beaker with ice water in it. So we've got seltzer water, which is really cold, seltzer water at room temperature, and seltzer water, which has been heated up to quite a warm temperature. So we're going to take a look at what happens when we open these bottles. So this is the seltzer water which has been left out at room temperature. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up and let's take a look, see what happens as I open the cap here. Okay, so we can see that it fizzed up quite a bit, and what's happening right now is the carbon dioxide molecules which were dissolved in the water are coming out of solution. So that's producing the fizz, the bubbles that we see. And I kind of made a mess here, so I need to clean up before we look at what happens to the bottle that was in the cold water versus the one that was in the hot water too. All right, next we're going to take a look at what happens when we open the seltzer water which was placed into the ice water bath. And just so we can see this a little bit more clearly, I'll just wipe off some of the condensation that's on the bottle before I open it. We'll try to do that quickly. Some of that condensation so you can see what happens here. Okay, so here we go. We're now opening the seltzer water bottle that was placed into the ice water bath. We can see that the carbon dioxide, which was dissolved in the water, is coming out of solution. I want to think about comparing how rapidly is the carbon dioxide coming out of the water when it's cold versus how quickly did it come out of the water when the water was at room temperature. Not as big of a mess to clean up this time. For the last part of this demonstration, let's take a look at what happens when we open the seltzer water that was placed into the hot water bath. I think I might get messy on this one. Let's see what happens. Okay, my custodial staff is not going to be happy with me, but hopefully after seeing this demonstration you get a better feel for how the temperature of water can change the solubility of a gas in the water. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Yes, I really love that video so much. I just love how he's like, I made a mess. It's like, it's water, dude, you're fine. But that really does show how temperature really affects soda water in general, right? Like that carbon dioxide was rushing to escape when things were warmer. It's because that water became less soluble because the water was warmer. But the question is that I've had for a long time, can it be too cold? You know, like we're all like, be cold, be cold. But can it get to a too cold of a thing? And we can go back to our slides.
Leo is on it.
Yes. Can beverages become too cold? So, as we know, soda explodes when it's frozen. Frozen with an SH instead of a Z.
I mean, Frozen, it's a great movie. It's a great one, too. But also, we all know about the times we put the soda in the freezer and forget about it, right?
Yeah, and
it
just
beer.
Blows up. But does anybody know why, right? And this is something that I looked into. It's due to the mixture of water molecules and carbon dioxide. Soda is mostly water and it's full of course, carbon dioxide. We already talked about this. So what happens is when it's starting to freeze, that water is expanding. So it's making less room for that carbon dioxide that's in that solution. And what that happens is it's like, I need somewhere to fucking go, like to go. And so like, let me out, and things explode. So water and diet soda, they freeze at 32 degrees. And then you have down below here where beer and I believe wine freezes at a different Fahrenheit, right? And alcohol freezes at different Fahrenheit. So what you have to be careful of is where you're putting your soda water. If you're putting something that bubbly in the freezer, you have to watch how cold your solution is becoming, because it's going to start freezing those water molecules, and if so, your juices or anything, and it's going to be forcing your CO2 out of your drink. Also with nitro glass, right? So a lot of us like to nitro our glasses. We have really awesome ice cubes. We need to watch ourselves. You want to watch yourself while using these things, because the nitro can instantly freeze that water, which will start to release your CO2, and then your drink could be flat because your glass is too cold and it's freezing the things that aren't gas.
Hey, Kapri.
Yeah.
When soda water is cold, does it release the same amount of CO2 over time as room temp soda, or does it release less?
It's going to be less.
Okay.
For sure. I wish I had that rate. I actually tried to look for the rate of so, and I could not find it. So that is a project that I might have to do myself and find a person that can do science. But it is releasing faster as the warmer the liquid goes, for sure.
And that's going to definitely change.
So stay tuned on that.
Okay, boo.
I said stay tuned on that answer.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And really that just talks to, because it's colder, it's keeping the CO2 and the water molecules as connected as possible, right? As soon as that water starts to move a little bit differently, that CO2 is disconnecting from that water.
Right.
But also I want to kind of talk about the Japanese highball and that cocktail itself. We've seen a lot of videos where they're just stirring that ice in that glass, just stirring that ice in the glass, and like things are going on, and that's all you're watching for a long time. It's because they're trying to get the temperature of the glass and the temperature of the ice as close as possible in their temperature. And because you want to do that is so that when you pull out that cold soda water to put in your whiskey highball, which Wild Turkey is really great in, you're just gonna go ahead and pour that soda water into a container in a vessel that is very close to the temperature of your refrigerator, right? So it's a lot of science and kind of measuring that you want to go into, depending on if you really feel that you want to have your all of your things at the right temperature. So it's like, what's the temperature of my refrigerator? What is the temperature after I'm stirring this far of my glass and my ice? So it really helps to know that. Yeah. But once again, you want to get your ingredients, like your juices, your syrups, as close but not at freezing as possible.
And if you have the facilities to do so, you also want to try to get your gas cold. If everything's cold, everything's great. The colder, the better.
Yes, but too cold is a thing.
For sure. It is a thing.
Ooh, so let's go into volumes of so volumes of CO2. So this was a new thing for me to kind of think about here. But a volume is the space that CO2 would take up at a pressure of 1 atmosphere. So 1 atmosphere is about 15 pounds per square inch. And at that temperature of 0 degrees Celsius or freezing, so 32 degrees Fahrenheit, right? That is standard temperature and pressure. So if you're scientific, which I've been trying to learn as I'm doing this, is SCP. So you get to see sometimes though the measuring of CO2 in gallons per liter, and that is actually the measure of mass of carbonation dioxide and a volume of water. So when you're converting from volumes or a volume of CO2 to grams of liter, you're gonna multiply, or the factor that you're multiplying is 1.96 or technically 2, right? So if you know the volumes of your drink, your grams per liter is gonna be technically double that altogether. And if you want to do the other way around, like if you know your like gas per liter and you're trying to find a volume number, you're going to multiply by 5.51. Sorry.
Chop it in half.
Chop it in half.
Gotta cut.
Just chop it. Cut it. So volumes of carbon dioxide in non-alcoholic beverages. So in water, the maximum number you can even get in that is 8 grams per liter. And like I said before, 1 volume of CO2 equals about 2 grams per liter in weight. So your average soda pop contains about 7 grams a liter, or which means that it has like 2.5 to 3.5 volumes of CO2, and then your average soda water or seltzer is around 8. And I mean, if you put 9, it's kind of over saturated with the gas.
Yeah.
But that means that it's about 4 to 4.5 volumes of CO2. But that's a non-alcoholic, and we're here to talk about drinks, right? So your CO2 volumes in alcoholic beverages. What I was able to find, which I thought was really cool, is that your average beer contains 2 to 6 grams per liter, and your champagne is about as bubbly as a seltzer water is going to get, which is really kind of cool, knowing that alcohol is actually more soluble than water. What that means is that it can handle more gas into its liquid, right? So what does that mean? You need to pump more pressure. You need to pump more CO2 into that, into whatever container you're trying to use, so that fizziness and those bubbles are incorporating with your alcohol, incorporating with your juices, and different things like that. Yes. Oh, I think this is really cool. You put this here. If doing R&D on the cocktail, it's best to weigh it before and after, and you can find your CO2 volume. And then if you do the conversion rate, you can find your grams per liter. So that's pretty great.
Yeah. So Kapri, if I want to get the same effervescence, right, that you receive in carbonated soda inside of my cocktail, will that mean I have to increase, or what? How much? What's the volume? Like, how should it be? Like, if water is 7, would I get my alcohol, my cocktail at 7?
So it really depends on the alcohol by volume that you have going on in your cocktail, right? So I think Liquid Intelligence says that they like to keep their ABV around 14 to 17%, so that they can get the max amount of CO2 in that drink. But it definitely depends on how boozy your drink is, because the more boozy your drink is, the more CO2 you're going to have to get to make it feel as though it's as bubbly as your soda water.
So what I'm hearing is, if I want the carbonation of soda water, I need to get or obtain more saturation of carbon within that liquid of a cocktail.
Yes, and that's why you see sometimes, and we're going to show you a little bit later, when people are using like ISIs or different things like that, they're pumping more than one time. Because you pump it that one time, you're not going to really get much, but you're trying to move that air out that way and other gases in that container. And you're trying to put more CO2 to contain most of it, so that it's dissolving into that solution or that liquid. Okay, next slide. Oh yes, and this is pretty much what you want to think about at all times. Your best carbonation is very high pressure and really low temperature.
Low.
Okay, we passed the shots. Okay, all right. Next slide. Oh, it's me first. Yay. Okay, so ways to carbonate. One way that we all carbonate a lot of the times with highballs and different things like that is with a seltzer, a club soda, or a tonic. I can read what's there, but these are going to be available to you. So, seltzer water and club soda. Actually, you know the difference between seltzer water and club soda?
Yeah, so seltzer water is just like sparkling mineral water. You can flavor it. Club soda is artificially made. So club soda is artificially carbonated. And tonic, obviously, it has like its chlorine and different sweeteners based off of whoever's creating the tonic.
So you want to keep those things as cold as possible wherever you are without freezing, so it doesn't burst. And then also the ingredients that you're adding it to, you want to also keep as cold as possible. We're going to go forward 2 slides. Tonic water. Of course, we know what tonic water is. If you don't, actually, I'm sorry, I don't want to assume. Tonic water, of course, is carbonated beverage soda water that also has an addition of quinine and also contains calories, whereas your seltzer water and your soda water do not contain that at all. All right.
Fermentation, right? That's the one way of carbonating. With fermentation, the chemical breakdown of substance by yeast and other microorganisms What that does is creates the yeast, eats the sugars, creates CO2, and then that CO2, if pressurized, can carbonate that beverage. The ideal fermentation temperatures are going to be between 59 and 86 degrees. Now, when you're going through fermentation, if at any point you want to stop fermentation and focus on like carbonation, you want to get that vessel or whatever you're fermenting into the fridge as soon as possible. When you get it around like 40 degrees, fermentation pretty much comes to a halt, and you can really focus on taking that CO2 that's been released and pressurizing and carbonating the beverage. The example that we have for you today is going to be tepache. All right, tepache is a traditional Mexican beverage from fermenting pineapples and different spices. I don't know if we can see that. This is our tepache baby. All right, so with tepache inside, we just threw pineapples, different spices that we use here, and of course sugar and yeast. The yeast can come from newly introduced yeast or yeast from the mother batch, right? So when we add the yeast, it starts to eat the sugars and produce CO2. We would take that. Oh, and alcohol, of course, right?
I have a quick question about your yeast, because obviously that relates very well to bourbon, and I know at Turkey, we've had our yeast strain for, we know, at least 65 years. Are you guys using anything special? Is this something that's been like passed down, or is it just like a standard yeast? Like, do you prefer like this one over a different one, a different strain?
So with this right here, I just used a Chardonnay yeast, but this here is probably on its 4th batch, so it has like evolved over time. We're taking from the mother set before. I do not have like proprietary yeast or anything like that.
But if you want to send us that,
if you want to send us some wild turkey yeast, we can make that happen.
We'll make you some wild turkey tepache. Can I
never let
smell it? I mean, we don't have smell-o-visions, but you can describe what you're smelling.
I'm gonna describe what I'm smelling at it. So it has that kind of that sourness that I feel like you smell over, you know, different vats and stuff with grains and fruit, which is really cool. And you can get that cardamom and that pepper that you have going in there.
Don't tell them the whole
story. Oh, sorry.
Whoa. Yeast, God, Kapri, secrets. But yeah, if you were, you know, privy to visit Wild Turkey Distillery, when you put your head over that vat, they let you know, like, whoa, don't inhale.
You'll knock out.
You'll knock out because of
too much CO2.
Too much CO2, right? So this is the first fermentation. The second fermentation, we added more sugar, right? And this might get a little messy, but you know, it's visuals, right?
We got a towel somewhere.
Right. So we add a little bit more fermentation, more sugar to cause more CO2 to be released. It was pressurized. We closed the top. This is just a swing top that you can find this bottle on Amazon, or you just Google it. You'll find a swing top bottle. Used mostly like with like home brewing beer. But when I pop this top and I pour this, you'll see how carbonated it is. Yes, it was. Right? Hold on. Get over the activation right there. All right. Here we go. So you can see it's fizzing up. I'll pour it. You can see how active and how carbonated fermentation can have your cocktails. So this is a product that you can add to a cocktail to increase the carbonation. And that's fermentation. Go back to the slides.
I'm gonna taste this.
Of course.
Because I have to taste everything. Oh my God, it's so cool. But just like that vat, the CO2 just entered my nose and it made it itch, you know, but like, that's not anything like what the vat does. Oh, this is spicy. Tasty.
You got this?
Yeah, I can do this.
I got a sign from the order.
We're still working, y'all. So while force carbonating, you will find instruments that contain pressure valves and gauge measuring tools. PSI is going to be how they measure that CO2 pressure and expressed in pounds of force per square inch of area. And it stands for pounds per square inch. All right, so next we have the ISI. So this is a cocktail I created. I'm pretty excited about this. So ISI is what you'll find a lot of, is that you'll find a lot of on Amazon or something. It's called like a whipped cream container or something like that. But you can also put beverages in this. So that's exciting. Also get my cold glass. So this was in a refrigerator overnight, all day today and now. So I've kept it as cold as possible. I put my glass also in the refrigerator to try to keep that as cold as possible. And then,
Hey Capri, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So I've seen people use these ISIs before, but I've never seen someone pull it out of a refrigerator. So like you do recommend like keeping it colder along with the glass? Like that's something I find really interesting.
I do, absolutely. So when I went to, I'm gonna let you know where I found this out. The first time I saw it keeping it cold was Thirst Boston. It was the first time I had a carbonation class after I started getting really like, what's up with carbonation? This was like last year. He was like, keep everything as refrigerated as long as possible because you want that to happen. You need that temperature to make sure that liquid is as soluble as possible. You want as much carbonation as you can have. So what we're gonna do is the compartments of your ISI that comes in handy, or comes in the mail, I meant, your bottom part here, the top, this here is going to screw in your CO2 chargers. So each CO2 charger actually holds about 8 grams of CO2 in each one, which sounds like you would only need 1 charge for water. If I only put water in here, I would only do 1 charge because that's all that the water could handle. But what we have in here is going to be a Wild Turkey Ricky. So we got Wild Turkey going on. We have a prickly pear green tea syrup going on. And we also have a little bit of water for dilution and clarified lime juice. Yeah, that's it. So I charged it a little bit. I've actually charged it 3 times before, but because I released it earlier, I'm going to charge it again. So you put your charger into you're twisting it on, and could you hear that? I don't know.
Yeah, you can. You definitely could.
Awesome. So that's the gas entering the solution. Ah! I don't know if you guys saw that, but you want to shake it into the liquid itself, the drink itself, and that is just adding more surface area, right?
Correct.
To the drink or the area, right?
Yeah, agitation adds more surface area so that you can get more contact with the carbon dioxide.
Right.
Hey Capri, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
For you as well, Holiday, to what you like to use. Do you prefer the whipped cream charger to the normal soda water ISI, and why?
You mean like nitrogen versus CO2 chargers? Because I think what happens with the whipped cream charger is nitrogen, and then you can also get CO2.
Okay.
Correct. So the CO2 charger is going to give you that soda effervescence, what we're talking about today. Now, we're talking like a whip. If you're talking like nitro, you get more, the bubbles become like smaller in that gas. You get more of like the effervescence you would get from like a Guinness beer on tap.
Right.
Like a creaminess feel.
I also use nitrogen chargers if I want to do something that's almost foamy to go on top and kind of hold itself on top of your drink instead of like it being the drink itself.
So it looks like there's like an ISI made for soda water specifically. So maybe they're asking about the difference between like that soda water ISI and like a normal like whipped cream one.
Yes. Oh my God. Ask them where did they find that, because I was looking for one. I would say yes. Get the one that's made for soda water. But if it's glass, I would say not to get glass. That's just my opinion. I don't have any real science behind that. I do apologize. But I think that a container that can hold more of that pressure without a scarce of like it popping helps. So after I shake that in a little bit, I'm going to slowly release this gas. Sorry, we talked about long noises, and this is one of them.
Oh, be careful. Little mess.
It's okay. We're not like the guy on the video.
The sound of beautiful carbonation happening.
Right.
While you're finishing that up, maybe Holiday, you can answer this question. How does tipping the bottle make the bubbles come out of the solution?
Tipping the bottle, what we're trying to do is press out the gas and not the actual liquid.
Also, with this, you don't want to get it right on the ice, or we're talking about how cold that is.
Yeah.
But here we go. Here's our Whiskey Ricky coming up right now out of our ISI.
And you can see the bubbles in there, how highly carbonated it is.
I'm so excited to drink this. Oh my God.
But yeah, a lot of people, I don't know, talking to myself in the younger years, you would squeeze the cocktail out the siphon. And what that does is it agitates the liquid or the cocktail, and it causes for the CO2 to leave the liquid and enter the atmosphere. Your carbonation levels will not be as high if you were to remove the top and slowly pour along the side of your glass. Key factors to remember is cold glass, great ice, cold beverage, cold liquid, and you have a delicious drink.
And it's tasty.
We could definitely see the bubbles when you held it up. I'm like, you can just mail that to Louisville, Kentucky for me. Thank you.
I got you, boo. I'm just gonna tape this up and send it over. Oh, it's so good. So that's your ISI. That's a cocktail. And just to let you know, I just how I did my proportions here. So this holds about a half a liter. So that's almost about 3 cocktails, depending on what you have going on in your cocktail. For this, I did almost 3 times the measurements. Adding what I know for dilution. So I know that when I'm doing a Ricky, I want about an ounce of water in there. So I did 3 ounces of water into my cocktail, and then I shook it up in here, as you saw just now, and added the carbon chargers. And that I did about 4 chargers to get to this level. So everything is CO2. So I guess next slide. Right. I can get all this stuff there.
Any questions out there? Any more questions, JoAnn?
Not as of right now. I think we're good to go. I did have one question though that just kind of popped in my head. When you had all the components of the cocktail in that ISI, were they in there in the refrigerator as well?
Okay, yeah. So I put the whiskey in the refrigerator last night. I put my syrup in the refrigerator last night. I put my clarified juice in the refrigerator last night, and I put this whole container emptied in the refrigerator. And then when I put everything into here, I put it back in the refrigerator. So I tried to keep everything as cold as possible.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so we're going to talk about carbonating with dry ice. Dry ice is solidified CO2. Let me pull it out for you guys. So with dry ice, you have to remember to handle with care, right?
Please.
Please handle with care.
Oh my God.
Speaking of which, let me grab a slide.
Yeah, let's not. He's grabbing something, but here is, you can see, whoop, dry ice. And dry ice is pretty controversial, I think, sometimes, right? People are like, oh my God, they put dry ice in my cocktail. I can't believe they did that. If you do it safely, it's okay.
Yeah, but with that said, Kapri, can I reach my hand in the dry ice?
Sorry.
Okay.
Don't do it.
Can I eat this dry ice?
Please do not.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
You want to work with an insulated glove, like I have here. And what I'm going to do this dry ice, here in my, let me pull up. All right, I'm going to pull up so you guys can have a visual of the keg and dry ice situation. All right, so here we have my, this is a torpedo keg. It's similar to like a Cornelius keg. Nice. It's a a ball and lock keg. I have my ball and lock connected here, right? And as you see inside, I have water. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's some water inside there. I'm just gonna take the dry ice and add it to the water.
This is so cool.
And then I'm gonna lock it down. And here I have connected a spudding valve. It's a technique that I stole from like the home brewing community, which is going to allow for the pressure to come out of the keg, right, into this tube. And here we have a pressure release valve that I'm going to set just for, I'm going to set the pressure release valve is going to be set at, I'm going to say 70 PSI. PSI is pressure per square inch, and that's set. I'm going to add dry ice, and when it hits a little bit under 70, you'll see it come out of the release valve. We're going to let this chill and do its thing, and we'll taste it and see what we got.
Can we hold that?
Oh, you can hold the phone. Right. Dry ice.
Wait, could you hold that sideways so we get a better picture?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Appreciate you.
You can come over the keg. You can see the release of the carbon dioxide.
So how much water did you have already in there, and how much dry ice are you adding?
So water in here, I had about 60 ounces.
Okay.
So with 60 ounces, you probably want to add about, well, I have a pressure relief valve set at a certain pressure, so it doesn't really matter how much I add. It's going to contain and stay at a certain pressure. But if I was doing this like in a ball and lock, it's in a swing top bottle, I'd probably have the math written down. I believe it's per ounce, I'm adding 1 gram of dry ice. Go ahead and lock that up and get it pressurized. Right.
Nice.
Great, and here we can see the pressure slowly increasing or readily increasing.
Mess around with it for a second. Yeah, there we go. We can see it perfectly now.
Yeah.
We got the pressure going up.
Awesome. And I kind of want to talk about a little bit about what is happening with the dry ice in the scientific aspect. So when carbon dioxide, when it's frozen, encounters anything warmer than itself, it undergoes a phase change called sublimation. And then that is the ability of a substance to go from a solid to a gas without solid to a gas. I can't get that back up there for you. Without going or going through the liquid phase. So that's what the dry ice is doing at the moment inside of this keg.
Yeah, we can go back to the slides while this reaches.
It reaches its high point.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we? Awesome. So he's about to do that and get that water in there up to a CO2 level, but you can also do this with a cocktail in this keg, right? If you wanted to keg a cocktail, you can also do the dry ice to do that because dry ice is the solid form of CO2.
Get that dry ice out the way. We'll let this work and we'll come back and taste this.
Okay, we're gonna come back and taste this. So we're gonna go on. What I thought was really cool though, I wanna bring up something I thought was really cool about dry ice and trying to carbonate a drink with dry ice. I was looking around on the webs and books, and I found this excerpt of someone trying to figure out a way to carbonate his homemade root beer. And what he found out that he could do was put the root beer into a plastic bottle, kind of like a 2 liter. He then drilled a hole in the top of that 2 liter, and put a gauge and pressure relief valve on top of that, and drop dry ice into the bottom of the container itself. So what you can see sometimes that happens, and you want to be safe of, is that when you add dry ice to some containers that can't hold that pressure, it'll burst. It'll just pop open and burst. So what he did was adding that valve allowed it to release at certain times so that the container would not burst. So when you're using dry ice, you want to make sure that you're using a container that can have low temperatures, hold high pressure, and hold also that CO2. And so he found that using dry ice helped it work. Also, what's really cool, if you guys want to look at dry ice, there's a lot of conversations going on in different forums about how to carbonate beer with dry ice. I know that's not what everybody wants to think about, but if you are trying to do something in those ways or something a little bit more innovative, you can look up a lot of forums of people failing and not failing on dry ice and carbonation. I think it is definitely, talking about this conversation, Mike had brought it up to me. It's something new to me because I always was like, dry ice, but we've definitely found safer ways to use the dry ice to carbonate, and I think that's really awesome.
That's where we're about what we need to be. We're going to release that pressure. I mean, you can hear that pressure being released. And we're going to taste this homemade sparkling water.
Yay! Okay, let's get a glass.
All I want right now is just like a really refreshing, like crisp soda water. Like
that is so
my mouth is
because while I was doing all of this research, every time I had to get up and make a gin and tonic because I was like, I need a carbonated beverage while I'm reading this. I really couldn't. I was like, I'm fine. Everything's fine. Actually, you know what? I just need something refreshing right now.
Need something refreshing, you know, get the brain working a little bit better.
Bubbles.
Oh, yeah.
That's fine. You can see the bubbles.
You want to go back on here?
Sure.
I want you all to see these bubbles. I have no idea. Oh, sorry. I think I'm doing it.
You good? That's fine. We'll just taste it, okay, and you can use your adjectives.
Here, we're gonna do it right now. Can you pull it back out?
So I have a quick question while you guys are getting that out of the keg. Does the dry ice freeze the liquid in the keg?
It doesn't.
So it depends on how much you put in there. You can get frozen liquid, but we didn't put that much in there for it to freeze. And to rid yourself of that, you just wait, right? Again, the colder the beverage, the better the carbonation. So with dry ice, you get like a combination of both. You get the coldness and the carbonation. So it's a plus. I'll just taste this. Just taste it.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. We don't need to see it.
Yeah, just taste
it. But it's pretty bubbly. It's pretty cool. And it tastes like homemade soda water. But also with this container, you also will probably want to put it in a cold environment also.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Everything cold.
We're doing great on time. Okay, so we have our last one, right?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Up to you.
Slide. We're going to slide here. Dry ice. We talked dry ice. Now we're going to talk about forced carbonation, right? Let me grab the cocktail that's chilling in the freezer. Great. So forced carbonation. With that, we're going to make sure we have this here is a 20. In the picture, you can see a 20-pound CO2 tank with a regulator and a hose, right? You want to make sure that the gaskets for the hose connecting to the regulator match up. They vary in size from like 1/8 to like 5/16 to like 3/4. So make sure you have them all matching up, and then you get down to the 2-liter compartment. Honestly, you can just use any 2-liter, maybe like I don't want to say any brands, but like a soda that has, you want to get a 28 make sure it has a 28 millimeter screw top, and then you have a carbonating top that's going to connect to your ball and lock socket. The carbonating top you can find on carbonating cap, my apologies. Carbonating cap you can find on Amazon or at your local home brewer. again, make sure it's 28 millimeters so they can match up with your average 2-liter soda bottle or 1-liter soda bottle in the case that we're going to use. All right, great. So I'm gonna switch cameras. Well, actually, I'm not gonna switch cameras.
Oh, okay, I can hold it for.
I would have to switch cameras.
Okay.
So with this, again, we have it all set up. And I pulled my cocktail out the freezer.
Get your glass.
For sure. Again, you want to have it as cold as possible. Ideally, you want your gas to be cold as well. Have a cold glass with cold ice, cold cocktail, which is going to ensure that we get as much soluble CO2 in the liquid.
Forgive me with my hands.
I'm going to unscrew the cap. I'm going to add our carbonating cap. When you do that, you want to make sure you squeeze out as much air as possible. Again, air is the enemy out of that bottle. Air. Curse you, air, right?
Hey, Holiday, are you just doing this in like a normal, like plastic, like Coke bottle or whatever it may be?
For today, I'm using a 1-liter bottle. Obviously, if you're at a bar or you run a bar program, you know, full service, you might want a larger bottle so you can do like 2 or 3 at a time.
Okay.
When people see this, they're gonna want one, you know. So make sure you're prepping yourself to be ready to pour and go, pour and go.
I'm gonna add the cap, boom, lock it down. Then we're gonna turn on the CO2. And when you turn on the CO2, it's very important that you shake the SHIT out of it, right? Shake it very vigorously. What it does is going to increase the surface volume of that liquid introduced to that carbon dioxide. You get more bubbles. There we go. You get a pop.
Nice.
Keep the CO2 going, and you shake the SHIT out of it.
So in here, what do you have in here in the bottle itself?
In this bottle, I have some great wild turkey, a little bit of lemon, and water. So I went with 4 ounces of water to 1.5 ounce of spirit. Again, the water saturation levels are lower, so the more water is in the cocktail, the more carbonate it's going to be. But if you add more alcohol to the cocktail, you need to increase your PSI. Right now, my PSI is set at 80. I'm continually shaking. I can turn it off. I could have turned it off.
Will you talk a little bit about that, Holiday? Is if you have more water, what you want your PSI to be at, or if you have less water, what you want your PSI to be at?
Well, I'm going for a highball, right? So I'm accounting for dilution in addition to soda water. And with that, I'm still adding maybe like 1/4 to 1/2 ounce of additional water so that I can ensure that carbonation is prominent throughout this cocktail.
Do you know the PSI if it was all water and if it was not?
So if it was all water and I put the PSI at between like 70 to like 120, again, it goes back to the maximum amount of carbon that can be, CO2 that can be saluted,
not exactly.
So the answer is.
At home, you'll find out.
But when you're doing R&D, again, and make sure that you weigh your cocktail before you carbonate it, and then after you carbonate it, so you can find that sweet spot of PSI to get the bubbles that you need in that beverage. Because each beverage is going to be completely different. So when you find that number, you have to make sure you set it and replicate that.
I think that's really huge to say. So definitely make sure that you're doing R&D, right? Not everything has a magical number to set it at. It really depends on what your drink is. Yeah. I mean, even with water, right? Some people might want it more bubbly than it can be, right? It can hold up to 8 grams per liter, but maybe some people want it at 6, some people want it at 7. It depends on what you and your team believes is the best carbonation for your program.
Yeah, and going back to that pro tip, you might have to adjust your recipe. So when you carbonate cocktails throughout, what happens is that carbonation is received by the sour receptors on your taste buds. So if you are, I don't know, maybe your sour ratio is 3/4 1 or something like that, 1 or whatever it might be, I would suggest you carbonate your cocktail, taste it, and if it's too sour, you need to go and modify your spec recipe and carbonate it and then adjust.
Also, it becomes on your sour receptors of your tongue because of the carbonic acid.
Correct.
that is naturally found in lava deep within the earth. Just to let you know. That's why you have natural springs.
Not like your little science kick. You just get like.
Yeah. So with our history, what John Priestley was trying to do in Torburn somebody from the reason why they were trying to do what they were doing is because they were trying to imitate those natural springs and those natural waters so that people can have them all the time and mass create them. Of course, like, are we humans if we're not trying to mass create the best things in the world? Yeah, you know, who does?
So after you guys shake a bottle like that, how do you get more of the CO2 to stay in the bottle?
So what he does again is he releases it, takes it out, and he squeezes it again to release that air.
So again, you want to push the air back out. You want to do this by
bubbles.
Yeah, the air. Try not to make a mess. And then you repeat. So you want to do it around 2 or 3 times, and then you pour in your cocktail. So I'm gonna do it for the last time.
He's gonna do that one more time. Do we have any questions out there? How's everyone feeling? I can't see the Facebook, so.
I know me. That's like the worst part. I can't see who else like watching or.
I know. I'm gonna have to go back and see what's going on here. Also for his drink, I'm just trying to, you know, get the ice and the glass ready to receive this awesome carbonated drink.
And last shake. You want to let it settle for a second before you pour it into the glass.
Okay. I'm having so much fun. I hope everybody else is having a great time. I'm really having so much fun.
I've learned so much with you guys. Like, it makes me want to like try all of these different things at home.
I know. And they're actually not, I mean, I don't know about the CO2 tank. He did all that, but the ISI, I'm like, I could do this at home. I think it's very important that you are letting that gas out as slowly as possible.
Slowly. You don't want to agitate the cocktail.
Yeah. And agitating just means it's going to foam up.
Yeah, we don't want foam because that's releasing CO2, right?
And we're going to talk about that on our last line.
Oh, whoa. So many bubbles.
Could you pour on that ice?
Yeah. On the side, my reach, pardon my reach, to the top.
Yes, look at that. Woo!
And then you'll have the most carbonated highball that you've probably ever had in your life.
I don't know. I think I don't know. We're going to compare after this.
You see that action. You see that action. We moving, we shaking, we getting the bubbles popping.
That looks so tasty.
Oh, it's very tasty. And again, yeah, keeping things cold. We did use clarified citrus. We'll talk about clarity.
Yeah, let's actually go to our last slide.
Yeah.
Sweet. So this is from Liquid Intelligence. They helped us to understand things that we need to focus on when you're carbonating your beverages. So clarity. The opposite of clear is not colored or dark. It's actually cloudy. What that means is kind of have cloudy ingredients. So if you have juice that has lots of pulp and things like that, or something that's emulsified and stuff like that, you want to get that out of there, somehow clarify that so that you can have a better solubility in that liquid. So what we did with our drinks today is we clarified our citrus juices and made sure that our syrups were also as clear as possible. But clear does not mean that it's clear in color. You can still have colored clear ingredients.
The soluble.
Yeah, you're just removing the solids.
Yeah.
But yeah, cloudy liquids will cause foaming, and like he said, it allows the CO2 to escape. The second C is going to be coldness. The colder your beverage, the more CO2 that it can hold, and we've been talking about that pretty much throughout this whole thing. Of course, once again, you want to make sure your drink is as cold as it possibly can before it's freezing. And then you have composition. What does your drink consist of, right? And in Liquid Intelligence, they break it down into 3 points. You have your suds, you have your air, and you have your alcohol. Suds, the foamier or more persistent that the suds are, the harder it will be to carbonate. And it's determined on the ingredients with high proteins, high viscosity, and emulsifiers. So that's talking about egg whites, different things like that. Like, you want to be careful of what you're putting in there. And if you're going to use that, how to make it less sudsy as possible, right? Your air, we've been saying all this whole time, your air is your enemy of good carbonation. Make sure that you have less air as possible because it takes up the space that your container is that you're using. You want to make sure that most of that space is your carbon dioxide, right? So that it can force itself into that liquid. And then alcohol. We need to make sure what is our alcohol here. And the more alcohol you have, the harder it is to carbonate. So try to find out your ratio and your ways to find your ABV of your cocktails. For Liquid Intelligence, their biggest percentage or their focus percentage for carbonating was 14 to 17% ABV of a whole cocktail for their best carbonation. So of course, that's up to you and your team to figure out what's best for you all. And that's our class.
That is our class.
That's it. These are all of our links and things.
For sure.
This is how we found information.
If you don't believe us, check it.
This is how we found it.
Yeah.
And let's talk more. If you have more theories or anything, let's get into it.
Yeah.
But carbonated drinks are especially a great time right now. Things like to-go drinks, you're trying to figure out how to bottle and stuff like that. You want to think about these type of things right now in this time that we are in. So, yay. Thank you.
Guys,
Follow us.
Chocolate City's best. Holiday like Thanksgiving.
Capri.possible.
Capri.possible.
That's all I got.
That's it.
Absolutely crushed it. I know I learned a tremendous amount from you guys today. I'm sure everyone else did as well. Hopefully you guys can take this into your weekend with a little bubbles because everybody loves bubbles. But you guys crushed it. It's been so fun to get to hang out with you all and act goofy this afternoon. You brought the biggest smile to my face. So I hope everybody has a great and safe weekend on behalf of Portland Cocktail Week and Wild Turkey. We appreciate you guys. Stay safe and we'll see you next week.
See y'all. Thank y'all so much.
And the live stream is out. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much.